two things are true here. This is a very entertaining movie, but the character is still not very original. Hey, what's up, nerd fam? This is your boy Gashawn. I want to welcome you to Enter the Nerd. Today, we're talking about Across the Spiderverse, the second of 3 entries in the whole Spider-Verse trilogy series starring Miles Morales. So, a couple of thoughts that I have here about this movie. I'm trying to make this as brief as possible because some of these things will be echoing sentiments that I've had in the past about this character. But first and foremost, going to the movie. The movie itself, at a surface level, is entertaining. If you don't know anything about the comics, you're going to find this very entertaining. The character is entertaining. It looks good. The costumes are cool. The storyline isn't the worst. Little kids will most likely like it. Teenagers will like it. If you love nostalgia, there's a lot of nostalgia in here. Spoilers. There are some cameos in here from some live-action Spider-Man movies that you have seen. When I was in the theater, there was a lot of cheering when those cameos came about, and I completely, once I saw that and just kept seeing who was reacting in the theater, I was like, okay, I really know who this movie is for. And I mean, even before that, I mean, to be honest, the movie was, all of these comic book movies have never really been made for people who have truly donated time to reading comics and source material. Like, we come last. But as far as the general audience, because there's more of them than there are of me, they're the number one demographic they're catering to. So I completely understood that. With that being said, there are a couple of themes in here. Or maybe there are a couple of themes, but one of the things that I understood, one of the metaphors that are being talked about was Miles Morales was saying that, this is his own story. That kept being said, like, it's my story. I'm going to do my own thing. I gotta spread my wings, right? There's all these different things were happening. And I just can't help but think that they were trying to make it seem like Miles Morales was almost like his own person. And in almost every way, he isn't. Yes, he wears Jordan Dunks. Yes, he is half black and Puerto Rican. But by way of character beats, and even his villains, he is essentially Peter Parker. Now, a lot of people go like, no, look at his power set. He can go invisible. He has his Uncle Ben moment, which is something that they talk about in this film, that all the Spider-Men have to have some type of Uncle Ben moment, or, something or a Gwen moment where someone dies close to them and it makes them hardened into who they are, right? And that is true for certain parts, especially because Peter is the one who originated that. But let me ask, if you're truly trying to make a character stand on their own, why do they have to follow a trope of some sort? Unless you're trying to get them as close to the original version of the character so people will like them, right? And that's essentially what happened with Miles Morales in the comics, right? Because he only was able to come about when Peter Parker died. He replaced the ultimate version of Spider-Man, that Peter Parker, right? Similar to what happened with Ben Reilly in the Clone Saga a couple decades earlier than that, and people didn't like that either. Mind you, that wasn't a race thing. That was just, okay, well, we want you to like Ben Reilly. He's a new guy, and Peter Parker's gone, and people rejected that. The same way how they rejected Miles Morales, right? And even though people tried to point to it being a race thing, it's just people like what they like. They love Peter Parker. But the people who wanted Miles Morales to work didn't care. They made all of his villains Peter Parker's villains. Even when it came down to how his love interests are. I mean, he even has his own Gwen. There's so many parts of him that are Peter that it's not really that original. To the point where even the variants that we met in the movie, they were all just variants of the same story. So it's like, it kind of loses value. Now, mind you, Spider-Man is my favorite character. My favorite comic book character ever. But what sucks is that there's just so many different versions of him. Like, so many. Like, he's so oversaturated at this point, especially after the whole Spider-Verse event. it just gives anyone who has license to make an adaptation to do these kind of things, because we saw it in, the Far From Home movie. I believe, I hope I'm getting that right. It's Far From Home, the third one, where all the Peter Parkers came together, Tobey Maguire and the Andrew Garfield and all that. When they all came together, like we saw them, they wanted to do their own version of Spider-Verse, and now obviously we have these animated movies that are coming out, so it gives them a chance to have all these different versions on screen. But as far as trying to sell us on Miles Morales and that he's original and that he's his own person, it's kind of hard, where he quite literally shares everything. Even his uncle, the Prowler, even though Aaron Davis is from the Ultimate Universe, the Prowler is something that originates with Peter. Even the Spot is something that originates with Peter. So there's not much that Miles has of his own, to be quite honest, right? And even down to a lot of the things in his personality, him being a teenager, like he just kind of replaces Peter. He's kind of a stand-in for a lot of things. Now, funny enough, my favorite Spider-Man variant, right, which I do have on the guy I'm wearing on my shirt right now, appears in this movie, which is Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099. Now, to not be a hypocrite here, a lot of the things that I say about Miles actually do apply to him. So he's not an original character by way of the fact that he's still called Spider-Man, right? So when I say that, and I still actually prefer, once again, Peter Parker Spider-Man. But there are some key things about Miguel which are actually pretty dope. Number one, he doesn't really have this, like, Gwen moment as far as losing a loved one and that making him do what he does. I mean, to be honest, he has a pretty, like, messed up origin by way of having his mom have an affair with her boss, and him not even knowing that boss, which is his boss, Tyler Stone, be his father. His father, like, poisoned him with, like, this drug called Rapture, made him addicted to it because he didn't want him to leave the company. He winds up getting his, like, DNA spliced with the spider. He gets, like, fangs. He gets, like, pretty much all the same powers as, like, the original Spider-Man, plus the ability to have telepathy. Once again, talons, fangs. He's pretty damn strong. But his personality isn't the same. He didn't get this as a teenager. He wasn't, like, some nerd trying to make it. He's actually pretty dark, and his personality was not like Peter's. Now, in this 2099 universe, when it came out in the 90s, in that universe, he's not replacing Peter. Peter had already been long dead in his universe. He's just further down the timeline. And there are literally a whole bunch of different futuristic counterparts to people like the Punisher, Venom, and stuff like that. So once again, a lot of that stuff that I said about Miles, about, Miles having a lot of villains from Peter, also apply to Miguel. But how they utilize it is very, very different, because he also has characters like Dana D'Angelo and Xena. That's one of his love interests that are different. They're not like Gwen. They're not like Mary Jane. He doesn't necessarily have like a Black Cat type of thing. There's not like a huge Clone Saga thing that's going on. He doesn't beat for beat copy stories. Now, is there like a Venom, which happens to be his older brother, Cronstone? Yeah, but it isn't exactly the same. It is actually Eddie in Miles Morales' universe. Like, it is actually that. Like, he's fighting some of the same people. Like, he's fighting the Hobgoblin. He's fighting this. Like, it is literally just a minute change in what's happening in Peter's universe, or what Peter was fighting originally, versus it being somebody different. Like, even the Vulture, right, is like some weird cannibal in 2099. Like, he isn't exactly the same, but still, by name, he's still the Vulture. So like I said, there is some crossover, so I don't want to be a complete hypocrite here and be like, oh, they're just completely different. They're both variants of the original by way of being a Spider-Man, but one comes way down timeline, the other one replaces the other one. And the way Miguel O'Hara and Spider-Man can interact is so different because they're not the same type of people. And Miguel even works for Peter Parker at some point at Parker Industries later. And even the whole Alchemax thing is something that originates with Miguel O'Hara. There are actually some things that only originate in a 2099 universe that are just for Miguel. So there are some things that are only for him, which is cool. Even just the whole, like, Day of the Dead costume, that's dope too. That's one of the first things that made me really, really like Miguel O'Hara was the costume. That's something that, as a child, you really hook on to the visuals. But a lot of this is the same as what I said with the first film, to be quite honest. It is entertaining. This is not a bad movie at all. Like you're going to be able to enjoy it. You might laugh at some things. That's cool. But this doesn't make me feel differently about the character because I actually read the books. A lot of people who've never read the books. Actually, I went with my friend Henneth. He was watching it, and he was even telling me that he prefers this version of what they present in the books. And I will say that this is probably more palatable than that, but a lot of the same surface level stuff, which is, in the end of the day, he still just has a whole bunch of Peter's leftovers that still exists. Now, most people who have never read the comic will be like, if this is 100% original to them because they've never seen it. So I don't blame them. I'm not going to blame that audience. I just understand that it's lazy. Like, it's absolutely lazy. Oh, and the weird thing that they did with Jessica Drew, right? They race swapped her and then chose to have her pregnant, which obviously was in the comic, but it wasn't well received in the comic. A lot of people thought that was a really strange thing. So if we were going to have our first Spider-Woman, Nancy Drew appearance, why did it not at least look like the one that's in the comic? I don't know. What was the point? Tell me. Was it to provide balance? We have a whole bunch of people who are appearing white, so we need to have... Is that what that was? Because that's not the character, but whatever. That's par for the course of what they're doing in Hollywood, right? It is what it is. I really can't be surprised at this point. But whatever. Let me know. Did you love Across the Spider-Verse? Was this one of your favorite movies when it comes to this stuff like that? I'm thinking more than one thing at once here. I do think it was an enjoyable movie, but if I have to also think with my comic book brain and being able to go and compartmentalize and go, well, the character I'm still not that fond of, doesn't change my mind on the character, but I can absolutely see someone spending their money watching this movie and being satisfied with what they saw. Let me know what you thought. Let's talk about it in the comments. Enter the Nerd.